Hi and welcome back to the Bookwanderers Club. This is episode 10 and the last episode of series 2, but don't worry, the Bookwanderers Club will be back. Keep an eye on my social media and website for more information. So the author for Book Chat this month is actually me. Pages & Co. for the Book Smugglers comes out on September 16th. So I have a guest host in the form of lovely Gavin Hetherington from the BookTube channel How to Train Your Gavin, and he chatted to me a bit about the new Pages & Co. book and what you can expect. So a huge thank you to Gavin for being my guest host for the Bookwanderers Club, and you can find out where to find his channel in the link below. And then answering big questions from some of you is Nadia Shireen, author of Grimwood, which is her debut middle grade book. You might know her from picture books. She tells us about her favourite authors, her favourite biscuits, and which planet she would visit and why. And then to round things off this episode, we have Maisie Chan, who is the author of the Danny Chung and the Tiger Warrior series. And she tells us about 3 things that inspire her and 3 places that she gets her ideas from. So to start things off, we have a book chat with me, interviewed by Gavin Hetherington.
So this is the Bookwanderers Club, but things have been switched around a little bit because I am gonna talk a little bit about my book, which is coming out, and I have got a guest interviewer, my friend Gavin, who is a bookseller and YouTuber extraordinaire, to come and be part of the Bookwanderers Club in reverse. To speak to me about the next Pages & Co. book. So thank you so much for coming and doing this and swapping roles with me.
Honestly, Anna, thank you so much for inviting me to do it. I honestly love chatting to you about all things Pages & Co. anyway. You're one of my favorite authors. This is honestly an honor for me. And I probably speak for everyone when I say we are so excited for the Book Smugglers. Like, seriously, we have been waiting, a year for this book. So I was wondering, just to start off, would you be able to let us know what the 4th book in the Pages & Co. series is about and what fans of the series can expect and love from the new book?
Okay, so this is the first time I've talked about this book as well, so I'm still getting used to like how to talk about it. So, and also when you're like 4 books into a series, it's like gets harder and harder to talk about it without spoilers.
Yeah.
So book 4 though is a little bit of a kind of, I see the series as like books 1 to 3 are an arc, and then books 4 to 6 are an arc. So like if you haven't read any, I do think you get the most out of it if you started at the beginning, but book 4 is the best place to jump in if you don't want to start at the beginning, because the narration is split between Tilly, who's my heroine for the first 3 books, and Milo, who is a new character that we meet in book 3. And Milo lives on board a train called the Sesquipedalian, or the Quip for short, which is a book smuggling train with the Book Smugglers. And in book 4 onwards, as well as continuing Tilly's story, we also find out a lot more about Milo and his life, how he ended up on the Quip. And I won't do any spoilers, but yes, their stories become a lot more intertwined. There is book alchemy and poisoned books and a trip to Venice. And if you've read book 3, we return to the archive and kind of find out what's going on there post the events of book 3.
Oh, I mean, that's a lot of information that I cannot, like, it just sounds like it's going to be fantastic. And neither of us have a copy of it hold up to show people, but it does have a beautiful cover. And I think it gives us a sense of what to expect from that. But I mean, your covers are always incredible anyway. And that is one that I think a lot of people are going to look at and be like, oh my gosh, need to read this now. But also
I should say because we have a new illustrator, and I should credit him for his beautiful work on the cover. So the first 3 books are Paula Escobar, then book 4 to 6 is a new illustrator called Marco Guadalupe, and he is absolutely wonderful. I've seen most of the artwork now, and it's just I should say, actually, this will be coming out. Don't stress, everybody, when I say we're filming this a little bit before you're seeing this, so everything's in hand. But he's done such a beautiful job, and I think he's done a really lovely job of, like, it doesn't feel like a jarring change from Paola, but it's still really his own kind of style and work. So thank you, Paola, and thank you, Marco, for the beautiful artwork.
Yeah, and it's great that as well. It's quite apt because you're starting this like new era in the Pages and Go series.
Yeah.
So before we like chat any more about it, I was wondering if you could tease us further with this book by giving us a cheeky little reading from it. I can't wait.
I've got it on my iPad because, as we say, like I don't have a physical copy yet, and this is the first time again that I've read from this. So excuse me if I stumble over it. So this is the prologue. Yes, this is a prologue.
Okay, I'm just going to be sitting here just watching you like
okay.
this. Don't let me put you off.
The book arrived at Pages & Co. wrapped in brown paper and string. It was addressed to Archibald Pages and covered in a colourful array of mismatched stamps. Archibald's granddaughter Tilly had picked up the bundle of post that morning and brought it through from the bookshop the Pages owned to their private family kitchen. Archie didn't notice it until the shop had closed its doors and he was sitting with a cup of tea, sorting through the stack of bills, letters and books sent from publishers. "What's this then?" he asked, turning the package over in his hands. It had been wrapped very precisely with the brown paper in sharp creases, only a little tattered from its journey. "It was just in with the post," Tilly said. "You're expecting something exciting?" "Not that I can remember," Archie replied, "although this does look rather exciting, doesn't it? The stamps would seem to suggest it's from Italy, I think. How curious." He took out his penknife and neatly sliced through the tape at one end, peeling back the paper with the satisfying crinkling noise that comes from brown paper in particular. Archie pulled out a hardback book that was rather worse for wear. Its dark green cloth cover was frayed at the edges, and several of the pages were visibly ripped and stained. On its spine, in faded gilt lettering, was the book's title. And this is when I've realised that this is in Italian and I don't know that I'm confident how to pronounce it.
Do it.
Okay, here we go.
It's your book.
Meraviglioso Maggio di Oz. I need to get my Italian-speaking friend to confirm that one with me. So apologies if you're watching this and I've messed that up. I will get that right for the next time I do this. And its author, L. Frank Baum. "An Italian edition of The Wizard of Oz," Archie said appreciatively, stroking the edges of the pages in admiration. "I was right about the stamps, but I don't think we know anyone in Italy. Do we, Elsie?" He directed this last question to his wife, Tilly's grandma, as she entered the kitchen. "I don't think so," she said. "Is that something you've ordered online and forgotten about again?" "Not this time," Archie grinned. "Did it come with a note?" Tilly asked. "Good thinking," Archie said, opening the cover to reveal a small rectangular card. All that was on it was a symbol printed in black ink, a circle with a line that crossed it horizontally with a dip in its centre, like the outline of a flying bird or a simple drawing of an open book. Archie turned it over, but there was nothing else printed on it. "How strange," he said, turning carefully through the pages, but not finding anything else tucked inside. "I've never seen this symbol before. It doesn't mean anything to me." He stood up and started rifling through the rest of the post to see if there was anything else that had come from Italy, but it was just the book and the card. Archie sat down heavily, his face pale. "Goodness, you look exhausted," Elsie said, coming over and putting a cool hand on his forehead. "And you're burning up." It was a warm day, but nowhere near hot enough to produce the rapidly gathering beads of sweat on Archie's skin. "Just overworked, I'm sure," Archie reassured her. "I'm not getting any younger after all, but I do feel a bit peculiar. Maybe I'll just have a quick lie down." He stood up, but quickly wobbled on his feet, and Elsie had to help him up the stairs to their bedroom. "He fell straight asleep," Elsie said when she returned to the kitchen looking worried. "And something else strange. As I put him to bed, I noticed that his fingertips were purple." "Purple?" Tilly repeated in surprise. "Yes, as though he'd been picking blackberries. I wonder if he's touched something he's allergic to." She tailed off as both she and Tilly turned to stare at the mysterious book lying on the table. Elsie gingerly picked up the brown paper it had come in. "But he can't be allergic to paper or books or anything like that, can he?" Tilly asked. "Surely he'd know that already, what with working in a bookshop and all." "The book looks very old," Elsie pointed out. "Perhaps there's some kind of glue that he's sensitive to, or it's come into contact with something unpleasant somehow." "But not on purpose?" Tilly asked nervously. "Goodness no," Elsie said. "I mean, surely not." She paused and glanced worriedly at Tilly. "Although he does know how to get people riled up," she went on. "And, well, it's not as though we haven't made more than our fair share of enemies in the book wandering world over the years. But no, who on earth would be sending your granddad something poisonous or dangerous?" But Tilly wasn't convinced, and she could see by the look on her grandma's face that neither was Elsie. "Well, let's just put this somewhere safe," Elsie said briskly, picking up the book with some kitchen tongs and sliding it into a large plastic sandwich bag. "And when Archie wakes up, we can see if he has any idea who he's irritated this time." But 2 weeks later, he was still asleep.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And do you fancy reading the rest of the book right now as well, by any chance? Oh,
Do you know what? I'm at that stage where I know you're joking, but the very thought of reading it, I just feel like it's at that point where I can't really change anything. But I know if I read it, I would immediately see something I wanted to change. So the less I look at it at this point, the better.
It's fine. Us watching at home, me as well included, we will just read it for you. And yeah, we're excited. It comes out September 16th, right?
Yeah.
September 16th, awesome. And you mentioned as well, I think when Pages 4 was first announced, that you were going to have a sort of new protagonist. And you mentioned Milo, who was a brand new character in book 3, and he was a side character at that. So coming into book 4, what was the decision behind making Milo your hero after spending 3 books with Tilly as your main protagonist?
I really ummed and ahed over it. Like some of the answer is very kind of not creatively inspired, in the sense of the timing of when we decided to do more books. And I think I feel like we've probably all read series where you can tell that the books have been successful enough that the publisher want more, and there's some sort of like really awkward twist like shoehorned in to keep it going. And I was really wary of that, but I really was excited about writing. I wanted to write more book wandering stories, but I felt like Tilly's arc had come to like a natural, not end, but like point where it felt right to leave it. And I just thought it'd be more interesting to tell a different story within the book wandering world. So Tilly doesn't know anything about book wandering, and her story is very much about her learning about it and learning about the world and how she's linked to it. And I thought it'd be interesting to tell a story about a child who has always known that book wandering is real, and his life has always been tied up with it. Milo's not really spent a lot of time outside of the book wandering community. Like his whole family is in that's like, he doesn't go to like a regular school. And I just thought it allowed me to tell a different story whilst also kind of expanding the world of book wandering. And also I just love Milo, honestly. I really like him. Like I loved writing him in book 3. It's fun writing a character who he has some things in common with Tilly, but he's very different in temperament to Tilly. And so it's just fun as a writer as well. Like you get to explore the world, but through someone who just experiences it differently.
I was going to say, you have this series where you are able to expand the world in such a way that just with the book wandering, the archive, things like that, you have different ways of exploring this from different points of view. So having Milo as a main character is something that I'm really personally excited for. Seeing a side character, be able to become a hero at some point, kind of, it's very inspiring, I think, for a lot of people. But did that then make it harder to write the Book Smugglers because you were bringing in like a side character to the forefront? Or was it because you already had so many foundations in the Tilly trilogy that you kind of felt like, okay, all the foundations are there, all I have to do is change the perspective?
Honestly, a bit of both. It definitely helped a lot to have those foundations there. I'd established things like underlibraries and the archive, and like things that were there's obviously some things that are unresolved at the end of book 3. But the honest answer is because Milo started as more of a side character, sometimes like you've got things that are set in stone about that character. And who Milo is, I knew who he was, and there wasn't anything big that I needed to change. But every once in a while you have little things that you're like, oh, now he's the main character. I wish I'd given myself a little bit more flexibility. But often having those structures and rules means that it forces you to really kind of think carefully. And sometimes I think you come up with the best stuff when you are trying to fix a problem, or you have set yourself rules that you have to operate within. So mostly it was a good thing, and I really liked having the kind of foundations of the world. But we go to really different places apart from the archive. Like it's quite a different, I mean, to me, obviously in the grand scheme of books, it's not that different. But as in, like, for me, thinking about the book wandering world, it feels very different, this book. It's set almost entirely in the world of story. There's not like huge, there's like scenes in the real world, for want of a better word, but like the majority of the book is either inside books or on the quip inside story.
I was going to say parts of the best parts of book 3 anyway were ones on the Sesquipedalian, and I love the fact that it kind of went transatlantic as well. And you mentioned that we're going to Venice in this book as well. So can you tell us, like, about the new settings and sort of what you can tease us about with that, because my mind's blown already.
So, well, I can tell you, I mean, because these things are on the cover, like, and the key, the book wandering, the places they go in books are on the cover as well. So so they go to the Wizard of Oz and they go to the Railway Children, which you can see on the cover. So I can tell you that. And then Venice is obviously a real place. I was supposed to be going to Venice to research, and then the pandemic had its way with that. So it's the first kind of foreign location I've written that, or even real life location actually, that I haven't really been to, which was interesting. Thankfully know lots of people who've been to Venice, and I was quizzing them on the feel of it and spent a lot of time on Google's like Street View, wandering around working out where things would be. But Venice, they go to Venice about halfway through the book, I guess it is, and I don't want to give anything away. It's where the new villain lives. So, and the new villain is my favorite villain that I've written. I think they are scarier than other villains. I like scarier than like Chalk or the Underwoods, because they are much more. They're very smart. Like they really know what they're trying to achieve. And I've really enjoyed. Usually villains are something I find very hard, like the Chalk and the Underwoods. Like it took me a while to get a handle on them, whereas the villain in this book, who's called the Alchemist. They have a name as well, but they're known as the Alchemist. I really enjoyed writing, and he lives in Venice, and they have to go and find him. That's all I'd say.
It's hard as well because I haven't yet had a chance to read it. Obviously, it's not out yet. So I'm so blind to what is
you're
happening.
doing such a good job. I've had like the first few chapters for like some context, but you're doing that. I really appreciate. It's a hard. I was like, can you interview me about a book that isn't available yet?
No, it's good because that just makes me more excited to read it, but also be able to kind of flavor of the kind of theme we're going for. So with you mentioning about sort of the villain then, what are the major themes from the Book Smugglers that you're trying to kind of give to us? Like anything that you're proud of that you've done in this book that you kind of wanted to convey, without spoilers, of course?
I think, honestly, a lot of it is like, not repeats, but the theme of the whole series has always been about the way we can take strength and courage from stories and the power of stories in a real sense, not just like they're enjoyable to read, although that's very valid, and not every book has to be like inspiring. You can just read books for fun. And the way that they can widen our world and perspective. Also, a theme I come back to a lot, which is in here, which starts kind of afresh with Milo, is just like being the hero of your own story. And that doesn't mean you have to do grand world-saving things, but like the power in, like, I think I want children to know that like they're in control of their narratives, even if it doesn't feel like it when you're young. Like you can choose what sort of person that you want to be. And I think that is something that's really important to me, and something that comes just back a lot. And like, you can't trust grown-ups, but like can't trust authority figure, just like finding your place in the world, that and like questioning the rules that exist and why they exist, and learning that some of them are important and some of them are about control and power and how you puzzle through and work out what you stand for. So I would say it's more of the same, because that is what I come back to again and again when I'm writing. It's what I'm fundamentally interested in as a person. So
and also that you can become start out as a side character and become your own hero as well. It sounds like for book 4.
I love stuff like that, and like because like the very beginning of I've read the prologue, but the very beginning of the first chapter is in Milo's perspective, and he starts by talking about how he feels like he's a good hero on paper, but he never really feels like a hero. And I just like, so I like, it's a theme I like, because I love reading books about that as well. And I think that if you're writing about things you love reading about, then you can't go too far wrong.
Very true. And it's great as well that you can still keep the heart of the Pages and Co series in mind. And I love when I catch you off guard with a question as well, because your face when I asked about the theme, honestly, my favorite moment so far. So
I'm not good at keeping my feelings off my face.
that is a good characteristic. So you mentioned The Wizard of Oz and Railway Children. Definitely The Wizard of Oz is one of my absolute favorites. Why those two stories for them? Like, was it plot, or were there things from each of those stories that you could sort of adapt and, you know, your characters can learn from? Like, why those two?
I mean, obviously, to start with, I'm pulling from a pool of out of copyright material. And it really matters to me that I'm not pointing children towards things that have content in that I think you can't read without context. And I'm aware of where I'm pointing young readers, and I'm aware that they might pick these books up without any without any historical context for what the books are talking about. And I feel that responsibility in terms of wearing. So it has to be out of copyright. It has to be something that I would be happy for a young reader to just go and read without knowing anything about it. So that isn't like the biggest pool of things to pick from. Limited. But I'm thankfully still, I think, because this is actually the thing I plan out most about the series is which books I'm going to use for book wandering because of those restrictions. Because I can like amend but there's a limited number, honestly, of things that are out of copyright that I want to point young readers towards. So that is actually the thing I'm most cognizant of. I know which books I'm going to use to make sure I've got ones that are interesting and relevant. But for this book, so firstly, it's just kind of, they both have like a kind of, or not steampunky, like the rail children, imagine calling the Railway Children steampunk, but it's about trains, you know. Yeah. And the Wizard of Oz has got kind of like an almost like, you know, like steampunks are very, you know what I mean, like it's quite like mechanical, and yes. So that fits with a book that's primarily set on the quip because it's a train. So the Railway Children, I love the Railway Children, and I think that she's a writer where they hold her books really, that's Inez bit, and I really think her books hold up very nicely and would really recommend them. The Railway Children is such a lovely, the Railway Children initially was just because it's a train, but then when I reread it, I realized that it had some really, this isn't spoiled, this is because this is one of those things that most people won't even notice that I've done, so I'm like torn between not wanting to like give it away and not wanting to like, but I want to point it out. But like, basically this book really mirrors a lot of the shape of the Railway Children, and there's a bit at the start where Milo goes into the Railway Children, he talks about how that book ends, and then the end of the Book Smugglers mirrors the end of the Railway Children. And so that's very much like a thematic thing, and also the Railway Children is massively about family and siblings, and Milo is very lonely, and so, you know, so the Railway Children is a very thematic one. The Wizard of Oz is more just like, it's a super fun one. They're like iconic characters. It's a great setting. The Emerald City is the main bit that they go to, and it's just like a really fun, lots of iconic characters. So that was more plot. Railway Children is more theme.
Nice. Well, I mean, I will admit I haven't actually read The Railway Children, but what I love about your book so much is that I don't have to have read, because I haven't read Anne of Green Gables, and I loved Tilly and the Bookworm. I know. I will read it for you at one point, but I didn't have to read it to enjoy the story, because your stories just have this magical way of just bringing just magic of reading and stories to life anyway. And for you, one of my last few questions, what is it about the Pages and Co series that has you continuously wanting to come back to it? Like, and did the Book Smugglers help to continue to spark your imagination and your love for writing? Because us as readers, we love reading it, but like for you, you have to have that passion and love for writing. So what is it about Pages and Co that sparks that for you?
That's such a lovely question, thank you. Because writing 6 books in a series is actually like, it's a long time to spend in one world, and I think for me the crux was being able to shift it a bit and tell a new story within that, that kept it fresh. It just allowed me to like open up a whole different bit of the world, introduce new characters, new settings, new villains, Ultimately, it is because like book magic within the what, but like it is the thing I believe in the most, like the power of reading, especially for young people, and getting to kind of play with that in a fantasy setting. It's just the most fun I can think of as a writer. I love thinking about real life books and reading and the way we react to stories, and then thinking about how I can make that a fantasy like thing. And I just have the most fun coming up with it. And every time I read a lot of books about like libraries and bookshops, and like I just did a bookbinding course and I got loads of ideas there from like stuff to do with like old bookbinders and the methods of it. And I just think it is like, I just do think book magic is real in the sense of the power of transformation and empathy and the way it can widen the world and help you just work out who you are and what you stand for. Like there's nothing like it. And so writing for young people about that, it's just like, it's endlessly enjoyable and inspiring for me.
It's a dream job, and honestly, you're like helping to shape young minds. And you just mentioned that bookbinding course. Would you be using that as like inspiration maybe for like future books as well, or did any of that? I mean, you would have already written most of, or if all of the Book Smugglers by the time you did that course. Like,
oh yeah, it was finished. Yeah, apart from tiny tweaks.
Because you, one of the things I love about the Bookwandering is that you have the end papers, and you can get lost in these books. But like, I guess book binding in general is like a physical thing.
Yeah.
Is that something that will inspire you in the future?
Oh, for sure. And I think you'll probably they'll definitely book 5 and 6 will end up having like some more physical elements that now I understand it a bit better. But even when I was like cutting my end papers and like I was like, as if I'm making real end papers. So definitely. I just am a huge book nerd. Like, I know that sounds, but like, I love everything about them. I loved getting to learn how they're made. And I love, like we've talked before, like I used to be a librarian. I feel like I saw every day the real life impact that books can have on young people. I feel like it's such a privilege to write for this age group. The Pages and co-readers are the absolute best. And it really just feels like a privilege to get to do it.
Yeah, we are the best. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So for like my final question, just to help people with the wait between, well, from now until September 16th when the book is out, do you have anything you've read recently that you'd recommend? Any book recommendations that you would love to give? Just while we're waiting so anxiously for this book. Okay.
So do you know what? I haven't read any middle grade for a month, maybe. Middle
that's
grade,
not a lot. That's not a long time in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's weird. Like last month actually I only read adult novels, which is just I've just started reading Julia and the Shark by Kieran and Tom, which is absolutely beautiful so far. And actually a book that I loved that came out earlier this year but just came out in paperback is Amari and the Night Brothers, which I know that you loved. And I really did think that, and like it's not like Pages, but I do think probably if you like Pages, you know, it's like kind of fantasy world building. I really enjoyed Amari and the Night Brothers. I'm really looking forward to the next one. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dragon Mountain.
Oh.
And there's a new Dragon Mountain come out, which you've just read, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Dragon City comes out September 2nd. Our best one in the series so far.
They just get better and better, everyone.
It's the same with Pages and Co. They just get better and better. I think it's because with like middle grade and children's books, I feel like once you've established characters in the first book and things, you can kind of explore that a bit more. And then by the point of like book 3 or book 4, people have already fallen in love with the writing, the world, the characters, the plot, and all of the things that make up this book. So I agree, like definitely get better and better as they go on.
You're lovely. Yeah. So those are my 3. Those are off the top of my head. Those are 3 recommendations.
Oh, well, thank you so much for chatting with me about the Book Smugglers. I wish I could have asked more in-depth questions and got all the spoilers out of you, but just so everybody can wait and find out for themselves when they actually get to read the Book Smugglers. It'll be such a magical thing, and I know I can't wait. So thank you so much again for inviting me to do this.
Thank you so much for coming and being part of the Bookwanderers, because that was absolutely lovely. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Anytime.
Welcome to the Bookwanderers Club, Nadia. Thank you so much for coming and answering some big questions, and congratulations on your book.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm scared.
So to kick things off, could you just tell us a little bit about Grimwood and give us an introduction to it?
I will do my best. So this is Grimwood, and it is my first middle grade book, and it's about two urban foxes. So the fox, if you live in a town or a city, you may have heard them shouting by the bins in the middle of the night. You know, I used to live in London and there were foxes in my back garden all the time. Anyway, it's about two foxes who live in a big city. And they, for complicated reasons to do with their favourite fried chicken shop and a really evil cat called Princess Buttons, they are forced to flee for their own safety and leave the big city, and they don't know where to go. And a small rat tells them about a place called Grimwood and says, you will be safe in Grimwood, go to Grimwood. And they're very excited because they think Grimwood will be like, do you know that, you know, the 100-acre wood in Winnie the Pooh, the wind in the willows, they're in a beautiful wood. In most stories featuring woods and forests, it's all beautiful and lovely, and the animals are sweet and wear tweed waistcoats. They go to Grimwood and they think it will be like that, and it is, but it's just a lot weirder. There are shopping trolleys in the pond. There's a massive electricity pylon in the middle of Grimwood that makes all the animals a little bit odd, and they meet all sorts of crazy characters there. So it's just about their adventures in this weird new world they find themselves in.
Wow. And you mentioned it's your first middle grade book. What was it about this story that you knew kind of was suited for like a slightly different form and a slightly older audience?
Just the jokes, like I could get more jokes in. I felt like it was too much. The story felt too, I mean, you can get complicated stories in picture books, but I just felt like this was the beginning of a whole new world I wanted to explore. And I really just wanted to play with doing very quick drawings in pen and ink. Normally my picture books take a lot of time. There's lots of colour, and I have to really think about how the picture works, and there aren't many words. And I really wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to have fun with lots of words and do some very quick drawing. So this kind of book, I mean, it's very heavily illustrated. There are lots of pictures. I'll do a quick flick, see if you can see. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great.
You can kind of see that there are lots and lots of pictures, lots of jokes, lots of silliness. So yeah, I haven't got out of doing the pictures, but I'm just doing them in a different way.
Yeah, fab. Now, are you ready for some big questions from Miss Elliott's class at Our Lady in St Anne's? So thank you, Miss Elliott and Miss Elliott's class, for sending these in.
Thank you, Miss Elliott's class. Hi.
So we have a mix, yes, we have a mix of some writing questions and some other bits and pieces. Now, I haven't got names for I think they've written them all together. So these are, yes, all from Miss Elliott's class. So start with a writing one. So first of all, what do you do while you're writing, which could be interpreted in a few different ways?
I do lots of this and lots of this and lots of this. No, if I'm doing good writing, then I'm generally I have a cup of tea near me. I quite like having music playing, not very loud and not any music with words in, and I'm somewhere really comfortable and nobody's going to bother me for a few hours, and that's all I do. It's not very technical. I don't have to be at a certain place. Like I can, as long as I've got my laptop or my sketchbook, if I'm figuring out ideas, I can be wherever. I try not to be too fussy about it because life is busy and we have to do things in different places. So does that answer the question? It might do. I'm sorry if it doesn't.
I think so.
Okay.
Second question, which planet would you visit and why?
Oh my gosh. Maybe Saturn. Hang on, but Saturn can't support, there's something really evil about Saturn, isn't there?
Saturn I would always say was my favourite, but it's just
I think it was my favourite, but that was because when I was a kid, Sat sounded like Saturday, which was the best day, and also it's got rings around it, which is interesting. Like,
yeah.
why would that not be your favorite planet?
Right, but it has something scary.
There's scary about it, like it can't support life, or you would explode as soon as you landed there. But that's the same for all of the planets, isn't it? So I'm gonna say Saturn. Yeah.
Okay. Good, and that's a good shout. And I'm now, after we finished, and I imagine everyone watching will go and Google the specific evils of Saturn.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they are. I mean, don't listen to me about it. What I'm talking about.
Which part of Grimwood took the longest to write?
Ooh, do you know what? It was the ending, because this is my thing. I've always been like this. I love starting a new project. I'm like, woo, what a great idea. And then, you know, I go for it and I'm really excited. Yeah. And kind of as it gets, and it's like, oh no, I have to end this. This has to make sense. So trying to write the ending took a while, making sure it was actually a good ending and not just, and then they all went to sleep and it had been a dream. But sometimes I want to do just to get it over and done with.
I feel that in my core, that process. Yeah. Okay, question number 4. What is your favorite biscuit?
Oh, easy. Plain chocolate digestive, by which I mean dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Can't be milk. I know normally I like milk chocolate. I prefer it to dark chocolate, but on a digestive, it's got to be dark, because milk is just a bit too sweet, and I drink a lot of tea, so it's a good dunker. So that's my number 1 without question. And then there's a big gap, and then I'd say like the custard cream I quite like.
Classic,
not very adventurous.
I love a fig roll personally.
Never had one.
They're just on it. They're what my grandparents had, you know. It's just like, I think it's a nostalgia thing as much as anything.
Are they a biscuit? They don't even look biscuity. They look like cakey.
But do you know the official legal ruling on what makes a cake or a biscuit? When
you know what's tragically, I think I do.
Yeah.
Remind me.
I feel like it circulates on the internet every once in a while.
Yeah.
It was Jaffa cakes, wasn't it? They actually went to court.
Yeah.
A cake is soft and goes hard when it's bad, and a biscuit is crunchy and then goes soft. So actually that would make a fig roll a cake, wouldn't it?
It makes a fig roll a cake,
and it would go you wouldn't want it to be hard. So scrap that. And even you probably a chocolate hobnob, then I'd go for.
Okay, too much stuff in a hobnob for me.
It is like the extra version of a digestive, isn't it? Like
yeah. And I worry that those bits are healthy, the extra bits.
Oh, always good to be alert.
Yeah.
Question 5. Who inspired you to write?
That's a tricky one, because I've always liked writing ever since I've always liked drawing and writing ever since I was very small.
Mm.
So I don't know. I think it's just in my brain. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know how some people are really good at running and some people are good at maths. I'm not. And some, you just have it in you, and I just have the words and the writing and drawing in me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That sounds like I've got a very big head.
No.
And I'm like, nobody inspires me. I love lots of writers, but I can't give you an honest answer and say it was this person.
How about, because I feel the same, but I suppose I would say there's people who perhaps specifically encouraged me, like my high school English teacher really gave me confidence to take it seriously. Are the people who you kind of really encouraged you?
Do you know what? This is going to sound terrible, and it's not meant to, but not really. Not really when I was a kid, because I'm ancient now. I'm over 40. So I can say yes when I was a grown up and I kind of started to do it, and friends obviously very supportive, or my mum or whatever. But when I was a kid, not really. Right. I was good at English and I got good marks, and I say this not to be a downer. I say this because if you are like me and you have parents my parents are very nice, but they were never like, you must become an author or I'd love it if you became an illustrator. they weren't like that. And certainly no one at my school was either. I don't think it was a job that people took very seriously around me. So no, I just kind of did it myself. And then as I got older and kind of proved myself, then it was like, oh, okay, wow. But that was after I became a writer. So, you know.
That's good. I think it's good.
Negative. I just want to be honest.
It's honest, and I think it's really good and interesting. You know, there's lots of young writers and readers watching, that there's lots and lots of different ways, and everyone comes to it a different way with different encouragement.
This is it. Like, not everyone has that great teacher that kind of sits down with you and says, "You've got a real gift," and not everyone. I have very lovely parents, but they never sat down and went, "Oh, we think you should write," or "This is brilliant," and that's fine. You can still do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my parents were, again, lovely, but I remember that aforementioned English teacher at parents' evening, them literally, my parents being like, "Oh no, don't too much to do right," and him being like, "I actually think she's quite good." So I'm always very grateful to him. Yeah.
Oh, he sounds great.
Speaking of school, next question is, what was your favourite subject at school, and what subjects, in their words, were you really bad at?
Oh, I was bad at a lot. So I was very quiet and sensible, and I tried my best. So faves obviously were art and English. I remember when they were on my timetable, I would be like, "Woohoo, playtime!"
Yeah.
I love them, really enjoyed them. Then after art and English, it was like, stuff that I cope with, like geography and history and French. It was like, oh, all right. Stuff I was really bad at was science and maths. And in my school, I don't know what the deal is now in school, but my school, I couldn't just do science as one subject. They split science up into 3 subjects: physics, biology, and chemistry. And I was bad at all of them. I had to have extra lessons in chemistry, and I was in the bottom. Again, I don't know if they do this anymore, but in my school, if you weren't very good at something, they put you in a special group, so you all knew you were bad at it. So I was in a bad maths group where we were all like, woo. But it hasn't held me back, because guess what? Now we have calculators on mobile phones, and those stupid teachers didn't know that, and we all could have just been playing in the playground instead of doing stupid maths.
Yeah, I think it's hard, like, for children now, if you're watching this, it's hard to like get across. So often when we were at school, it was used as and obviously there are useful, if you're good at math, that's great, but we were told constantly, like, you have to be able to do these things because you won't have a calculator with you all.
Yes,
and now we do.
Maths is brilliant, don't get me wrong. And actually, the funny thing is, I have a son, and he's like, "Ooh, maths," and then I sit and do it with him, and actually I quite enjoy it. So I think maybe it was just the way that, I don't know, it was the way that we were taught back in the olden days that wasn't much fun.
Yeah. Question 7, what is your favorite classic book? Interpret that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the Winnie the Pooh books, the Happy Pooh Corner. They are beautifully written, beautifully illustrated. They're really funny, and they really don't talk down to children. And a lot of the stories are about nothing. Like, a lot of the stories, the characters are just wandering around thinking about things and saying stuff. Maybe a tiny thing happens, but not much. And I think, wow, they're really chilled and they're really funny. I wonder if it would be, I wonder what would happen if I wrote a book like that, if it would be published, or if someone would say, "We need more, it needs more pace." So I love those books.
Another vote for those here. And A. Milne's poetry as well, I just love. This is an interesting question. If you could relive any year of your life, which would you choose and why?
What a great question. Yeah. Oh, it would be when I was 17, maybe. So it would be the year when, I just remember it was a long hot summer. Again, this is going to be so boring. I'm sorry, kids. It's old people reminiscing about the olden days. But it was a long hot summer, and like all my favorite bands, I was really into music. I'm still really into music, but I had more energy then. So I was going to lots of concerts. and I was studying for my A-levels, and I loved my college where I was at, and just everything. I just remember it as one long hot. The sun felt like it was always shining. So we're talking about 1996, maybe. I know that sounds ridiculous, but maybe then.
Yeah, that's a lovely answer.
Yeah.
Right, penultimate question. If you could go into any of your stories, which would you go into and why?
Oh, that is an interesting one. Well, my picture books are quite different to Grimwood. My picture books are quite fantastical. I'm trying to think, because I do these picture books called about a girl called Billy, and she looks like she's brown with black curly hair. I wonder who that could be like. So she has these crazy adventures with her cat, who's up there. Yeah. So maybe I would do. Oh no, but then she gets into trouble a lot, and it's quite dangerous. Do you know what? Maybe I would do Grimwood, just because there are so many funny characters in Grimwood. I'd love to sit down and chat to them all and really get to know them. So yeah, maybe Grimwood.
Great. And last question is, who is your favourite author?
My favourite author? That's impossible. I don't know.
Who are some of your favourite authors?
Oh, some of my favourite authors. Yeah, I know. Sorry, it's really unhelpful, isn't it? Yeah. I love. Well, I really love So Roald Dahl was the guy that I read when I was a kid, and some of his books they have got nasty bits in, but I can't help but love them. You know, I used to read them so much I could memorize them. So I'm gonna go with Roald Dahl. I'm sure you've all heard of Roald Dahl. And I love, my favorite Roald Dahl books are The Witches, which is really nasty, the BFG, and Matilda, because I can remember how I felt when I read them all, and I was really excited by them. So yeah, I'll go with him.
Perfect, thank you. So those are your big questions. Thank you again to Miss Elliott's class at Our Lady and St Anne's for sending them in.
All of you.
Thank you so much for coming and being part of the Bookwanderers Club. Grimwood is out next week, and there is there's all the details about it in the description box if you want to find out more about Nadia and where you can buy the book. And there it is.
Buy me.
And in fact, there will be a very handy place to buy, a link you can click and you can buy all the books mentioned on the Bookwanderers Club if you're so inclined. So thank you so much, Nadia, and congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
Grimwood.
Hi Bookwanderers Club, I'm author Maisie Chan, and I'm here to talk to you about my new novel, Danny Chung Does Not Do Maths. It's about 11-year-old Danny who loves to draw, and one day he gets a surprise, which is his Chinese grandmother, and she moves into his room, which he's very upset about. And then it gets even worse because she takes the top bunk, and then he has to granny sit her for the whole of the Easter holidays. So my novel's about friendship and families, but there's also some things that I was inspired to put in the book, which are things that really I enjoy. So the first thing I'm going to talk about and show you is dim sum. So there's a whole chapter in my book called Dim Sum Love, and dim sum is a kind of meal, here's some, that Chinese people love to eat, and it originated in Hong Kong and southern China, and there's lots of dumplings like this, and this is a char siu bao, so inside it's kind of got, when you open it, it's got like red pork meat, and this is a sweet egg tart called a dan tan. And I love dim sum and go in for dim sum, and we share lots of food during dim sum. So you order lots of steam bamboo towers, and they've got dumplings in or fried stuff, and you just share it together, and it's a lovely way to meet your friends or family, and that lots of Chinese people love to do that in Britain. And Danny loves to draw, so the other thing I'm going to show you is pens, fancy pens. So these are really pretty pens, and I love to draw as well when I was a little girl. So when I was 5, I loved to draw, and I won an art competition, and a picture of Little Red Riding Hood that I painted was in my library. And so I think lots of that inspired me to write Danny, although when I was writing it, I didn't realise that there was so much in common with me and Danny. It just came out after when people kept asking me. And the third thing that inspired me was my home city, Birmingham. So this is my Birmingham mug, which somebody bought for me. And that's my university, Birmingham University of Birmingham, and Old Joe. And so I love going back to Birmingham and seeing my friends and family, and the novel set in Birmingham, because I think a lot of novels are not set in Birmingham. So I wanted to change it and have a book in the second city. And it's surprising that there aren't more books set in Birmingham, because it is the second city after London. And so I really wanted to do that and show a little bit about people that live in Birmingham, because it's a very multicultural city. People are very friendly, although some people, like the bingo people in the book, maybe are not that friendly. So I really wanted to put my home city in the book. So those are the things that have inspired me to write Danny Chung. And I've also written another series called Tiger Warrior. So I'm just quickly going to show you that. So this is a fantasy book with portals and dragons. And I don't have a dragon, but I have got a dinosaur. So we've just put that there. And it's a totally different book to Danny Chung, because there's lots of like fighting and mythical creatures and a tiny zodiac. So I hope that you can pick up Danny Chung or the Tiger Warrior at your library or bookstore, and I hope that you enjoy the stories. So thanks for listening to me today, Book Wanderers, and see you soon. Bye.
So that was episode 10 of the second series of the Book Wanderers Club. I really hope that you've enjoyed listening to all these author interviews, got lots of story ideas and been inspired and found some new books to read. As I said, the Book Wanderers Club will be back in some form, so do keep an eye on my social media or on my website for more details. As per usual, you can find out more about the books mentioned this episode, as well as buying them if they've taken your fancy, at my bookshop.org.uk shop. The link is below. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and happy book wandering.